no matter how good you are, there's always going to be better people. So you're not going to win every race. You're not going to be the victor in every competition, whether it be business or sports. At the top of every field, everyone's working hard. Everyone is highly talented. Okay. And so, and I certainly don't consider myself the most naturally gifted athlete or business person, right? So sometimes I probably had to work harder than the smarter ones. What you have control over is yourself. You want to do your best to show up as your best self. What the other people do or not do, you do not control. So if you win or lose, that's not as important as you showing up and doing the best that you personally can do with the resources that you have. And so that's a perspective that I first learned in sports that I now understand in business as well.
Welcome to the Jeff Sutherland Show. Let's grow today as we learn from decades of real estate and leadership experience.
We want you to know that when you log into this show, you're going to get authentic conversation. We're going to give it to you straight, and it's going to be real. Hey, everybody, this is Jeff Sutherland with the Jeff Sutherland Show and my co-host, Bella Loomis. We're so excited. We have Don Yoakum here today, and I've known Don for a long time, but I didn't really know him until recently really well. And it's an absolute honor to have Don with us today. I just want to tell you just a few things about Don. Don was actually a national champion in windsurfing 3 times, and he was also a 1-time world champion. To be a champion across the world in anything is a pretty big deal. And he was also a 3-time Olympic training team member. So Don has a great background in sports, which I think has helped him a lot in his career as well. And I also knew him when I was working at Keller Williams. I just never really got to know him, but I knew of him. And I knew that he had an interest in 30 market centers for Keller Williams across the California region and the Northwest area. And he's just an icon in our industry and a great human being, an absolute giver. And it's an absolute pleasure to have you here today, Don, because you've had some ups and downs in your career. You've had comebacks, and that's why I respect you so much. So, and he also is the founder of a company called Pro Insight, which you'll hear a little bit about that today. I'm also part of that company with Don. And with all that being said, Don, welcome to the program today.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Bella. It's an honor and pleasure to be here, and hope we can provide everybody some valuable information.
Absolutely. Don, I guess the first thing is, we've been doing business now for a while in the same industry and now a lot closer with Pro Insight. But I'd like to ask you, about your story. I'd like to ask you a little bit about your story and how'd you get to this place in your station of life?
Gosh, well, when people ask my story, I usually do talk about windsurfing because I believe that was formative to the way that I've approached business as well. It's my belief that when you rise to the top of any field of endeavor, it could be windsurfing, could be ping pong, it could be violin, that there's a certain set of disciplines that are required to reach the top of any field that are very applicable in many aspects of life, and particularly business. You've got to exhibit also a lot of resilience. As you pointed out, my career has not been a perfect trajectory of success. I can count many successes, and I can count a number of failures. And I want to believe that we will be sort of defined by how we respond actually to the adversity in our life. And I think for the most part, I've responded well.
Yeah, I agree. I was in one of our last podcasts, I was talking about some of the low points in my life and how I overcame those things. And I do agree. I think that's part of the way people will see us. people are very inspired when people, hit a low point in their career, their life, and they fight back. And so I'm very interested, in that process. Do you care to share a little bit about that and kind of where you
Yeah,
were?
yeah, of course. Well, first of all, as a young man, I got pretty serious about my windsurfing career at 16 and moved to Florida to finish school there. And, when you're competing, there is a very definite accountability, right? You win, lose, or, place, and the score that day. And there are, and I, in fact, I shared with my son just not too long ago because he recently retired from professional water polo. And I told him, I go, gosh, Ethan, it's actually pretty uncommon for a professional athlete to have a nice ending. And the reason why that is, I believe, is because if you're winning, well, why would you stop? And if you have if you end on a loss, well, then shoot, man, I had this wonderful career, but I ended with a loss. But often cases, that's the case. And it reminds me of a book I recently read about quitting. And it talks about the career of boxers and how they very frequently don't quit when they should. As great as Muhammad Ali is, I think he's probably one of the prime examples of that, of someone that overstayed their welcome. And, I don't know that it tarnished his career as a wonderful professional, but he would have probably enjoyed the later part of his life more had he not prolonged his career. But so, taking that sports experience into business, though, I guess I naturally just thought of myself as a person that should be at the top of things. So when I got into real estate, I was incredibly fortunate to have my dad mentor me, and he was quite successful. And as a result of his mentorship and my dedication, I was able to close 51 deals in my first full year in real estate. And that, I started in April, so I had a 8-month to kind of ramp up into that first full year. But, that was exceptional, obviously, in my field. And considering the time frame, the market was difficult. By the way, it was quite the contrast to today's environment. These days, there's only a few months of inventory. That does seem to be now finally changing a little bit, but the majority of my sales career, there was 18 to 24 months of inventory.
Yeah.
So for me to achieve my sales volume that I wanted to maintain, I was having to maintain at least 30 active listings at all times. And it was a tough market. Prices were going down during that time. And, I was mostly a listing agent, so I had to be the bearer of bad news. And it was a exercise in persistence, resilience, and also persuasion. I had to persuade my sellers to do the right thing. Otherwise, they'd follow the market down. And so anyway, all good experiences, though. And then in 2000, I was recruited into Keller Williams to be their team leader. And you'd mentioned that I had an interest in 30 market centers, which was true. I did start with one as their team leader in the Roseville Market Center. I took that market center from 10 to 184 agents in 27 months. And actually, once I replaced myself there and it continued to grow, that market center went on to become the most profitable Keller Williams in the nation at one point. And I built 10 successfully, KW market centers, that is, from the ground up, which I think is still some kind of record at their company. And so that was a wonderful experience. How I got from 10 to 30 was I joined with a number of other investors, and we bought an interest in actually 21 market centers. And that was in 2006. So you could say my timing was almost perfectly wrong.
Yeah.
So that began a very challenging period of my life. The market started correcting in 2006, and I found myself really for the first time in my life, really overwhelmed with adversity. And as a result of that, I ended up ultimately having to close 6 market centers, sell 5 below my basis. And we did get that portfolio of offices eventually to modest profitability in spite of the crash. But that journey was extremely hard, and there were a lot of hard lessons learned in it. And it might be valuable to your listeners to know some of the things that I learned. And one of the things that I did notice, by the way, was that when I had I actually had market centers in 5 different states. I was located in California, then Colorado, but I had market centers in California and Colorado and Texas and Florida and Virginia. And it was, so I couldn't be in 5 places at one time, let alone 30, right? And what I noticed is that when it got really tough, if I had employees, I would get calls. Hey, Don, send $15,000 to make payroll or make the lease payment or whatever the case may be. And from 2007, 8, 9, I got a lot of those calls, and sometimes to the tune of $250,000 a month. And it was pretty brutal, to be honest. And what saved the company was that I ended up ultimately placing local OPs in each of those offices, market centers. And it was remarkable once I had a partner with skin in the game in that local market center, how those cash calls diminished because they had to participate in them. So that $15,000 became $7,500, that became $3,750. And what do you know? In a few months, there was no cash call at all because they had made the hard decisions that needed to be made in that incredibly tough environment. And so we did ultimately turn that around. And as I mentioned previously, we did close some and sell others. But even of the ones that I think we had 14 in that portfolio that they weren't even in good enough shape when we bought them to qualify to be a franchise. So we took on some turnaround things. We did turn around 3 of them, even in the crash. But gosh, that was such a tough lesson. So I made a commitment and pledged to myself and my wife that I wouldn't be invested in businesses where I didn't have a partner in that remote location that also had skin in the game. And I have honored and followed that rule, and it has served me well. So that would be one lesson I would take. Wow.
So when you meet highly successful people, there's one thing I've found and that always hits. It's like this commonality that most of them have had a serious setback, and I guess I'm curious as to how you emotionally recovered from that, because that must have been an emotional roller coaster for you.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I had the unbelievable, unconditional support of my wife. It was, I was gifted with maybe the most priceless moment of my life, because I think sometime right after the Lehman crash, we were living in this luxury home in Colorado in a gated community, neighbors with Dave Linegar, founder of Remax, by all outside. I wasn't on Facebook then, but my Facebook reel would have really looked good at that time. But things were not good. And so I had a completely sleepless night, and I felt I was obligated to tell my wife that, we were in the process of probably losing everything. And I told her this, by the way, about 90 seconds after she woke up one morning, after I had been awake all night. And she looked at me, and a big smile came over her face, and she said, well, you won't lose me. I will be here. And It was the most beautiful thing that someone had ever done for me, and still is to this day. And so that was the foundation from which I was given this gift of permission to fail. And by the way, that's actually was a turning point when I started closing market centers. In other words, just like when I put those OPs in place, I just started making them really hard decisions. Right. And so I think one way to turn something around is first to just face reality of the situation. And if I was going to lead people through this, what was I going to have to do? And you have to be willing to do it, even though at the time it seemed like a very difficult decision to make, because when you close a market center, you employ a lot of people in the middle of a real estate crisis. So it's not good for their families. I'll never forget a conversation in particular that I had with one of my team leaders, and we were in Florida, and I asked her, I said, well, if you were me, what would you do? We'd lost $47,000 previous month in that office, by the way, under her leadership. She said, well, I would close the office. And I said, I think you're right. And she goes, yeah, but then I won't have a job. So we did close that office, by the way. And she was right. That was the right decision. Okay. But, you never want to be in a position where the decision that you make is going to harm some other family, right? Now, she's a very talented, resourceful person, and she was able to get another job at some point. But the point is that the only way that you make your way back is by facing reality and then making the tough decisions. And I will tell you, though, that to clean up that whole portfolio and that whole series of my life took me almost 4 years, and I did. And a lot of these gray hairs you see came from that time period. And what happened at me, Jeff, at that point was that now, interestingly enough, I had even more wisdom, but I didn't have the confidence. And that would be something else I would share with your listeners, is that be very wary of making really big decisions under duress, okay, or from a place of overconfidence. So remember, I built those first 10 successful market centers. Well, you can imagine a home run after home run after home run. I'm thinking I'm Superman or something. And that proved not to be true. What I did, my point is that I made a really big, bad decision from a place of overconfidence. I knew the market was going to correct. I was actually giving trainings to my agents in my office and saying, hey guys, the market's going to correct. Here's how you prepare for that. Okay. But what happened was I thought I was so competent at running that business model and my ability to attract people to lead it that we would weather any storm. And I probably gave too much credit to the business model. It wasn't as durable as I believed it to be. And I wasn't Superman. Okay. So just be conscious when you're making really big decisions. Are you in a temperament that is level-headed, right? And I've found that both extremes can be a source of bad decisions.
Wow, that's pretty sage advice. I got one more follow-up, and I'll kick it over to Bella. When you look at successful people, like highly successful people like yourself, a lot of people don't see the struggle behind it. They just think, wow, Don, he's been so lucky. Just everything comes his way. How does that happen for Don? So I love what you said there, the key things that you got out of that. And so emotionally, it sounds like that you had support from your wife. That's amazing. My one question on the team, on the OPs going into the market centers and such, what was your delay? And, was there a reason why you were delaying that? Were you just trying to do it all on your own? And then you came to the realization you just needed help? Was there any lesson in that particular situation?
Yeah, well, a couple things. One is I was told by the company that if I were to close a market center, that they would put all of my market centers in default, which would compromise. I had some of the most profitable market centers in the nation. I just told you, I had built with my partners, actually the number one most profitable market center in the nation. So the last thing I wanted to do was compromise the interests of all these other really profitable entities because of, this threat of default. And ultimately it was a veiled threat, but the point is that it caused me to fight in a really difficult environment to try to save them all. And that just wasn't going to be a realistic proposition. And that was another valuable lesson, to your point, Jeff, is that when you know the right thing to do, it's usually not going to serve you well to delay in that decision, right? And I didn't, and in terms of putting OPs in place in all of those locations, well, at one time, by the way, I was the OP in 23 market centers. Can you imagine? And,
Wow.
and so I had to, can you imagine trying to persuade 23 successful professionals in the middle of the great financial crisis to become an operating partner in a real estate office and invest and be at risk for future losses? Okay, so that's why it took me 4 years to do that, right? That was one heck of a sales job. Now, to their credit, by the way, some of them have done a stellar job. Pam Kiker comes to mind in Denver, for example. She's truly a magnificent business person that I really respect, and what she's done with that office has been tremendous. But so some of the delay was because I was under some pressure, which I visually faced, by the way. And then some of the delay was just, hey, when you create a big mess like I did, you don't get to clean it up right away. It takes time to solve big problems.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, what an amazing journey. So looking at you and your windsurfing career, how would you relate some of those disciplines you learned from competing to where you're at now and just staying committed to getting to the top? Yeah,
well, another thing that you learn by being at the top of your field, as a national windsurfing champion, or, I was certainly one of the top recruiters in the nation for Keller Williams. I think at one point I actually had recruited 3 of their top 5 agents in the world. So you also recognize that no matter how good you are, there's always going to be better people. So you're not going to win every race. You're not going to be the victor in every competition, whether it be business or sports. And at the top of every field, everyone's working hard. Everyone is highly talented. Okay. And so, and I certainly don't consider myself the most naturally gifted athlete or business person, right? So sometimes I probably had to work harder than the smarter ones. And, but you have perspective that what you have control over is yourself. Okay. And I would always tell my son this as well. You want to do your best to show up as your best self. What the other people do or not do, you do not control. So if you win or lose, that's not as important as you showing up and doing the best that you personally can do with the resources that you have. And so that's a perspective that I first learned in sports that I now understand in business as well.
That is so powerful because, you guys have a commonality, Don. Bella was a Division I college softball player, went to the World Series. So she's kind of a big deal. So I'm glad what you said there, it's mapping exactly to some of her experiences. So Bella, I'm sure you could appreciate what he just said.
Yes. And Don, would you agree that, some days your best may be only 80% and that's okay? You can kind of give yourself grace for that?
Absolutely. Yeah. And by the way, I don't want to lose this point though. Bella, one of the things that I have trained my leaders to look for are certain characteristics in people. And one of the things that I tell them is be sure to ask someone's story, because you want to find out what, of course, made them who they are today. And you want to find out what sort of foundation that they might have, what kind of grit that they may have. And what I specifically say, actually, is that if someone has reached collegiate level sports in any field, that's probably a person that is coachable, that is disciplined to show up for practice, that has been injured and had to be resilient. And of course, when you're a collegiate athlete, you're also surrounded by a lot of really talented people that also have all of those wonderful qualities. And so that rubs off on you, And so, yes, if be careful, Jeff. If I run into people like this, I try to get them into my world.
Believe me, I get it. When I've known Bella since she was like 13, she played softball with my daughter. I saw her, grow up in the softball world and become an absolute champion. And so she didn't have to tell me much at all. When she, I already knew her track record. And if I can ever get, around people that are at a high level of athletic performance, I want to be a part of their world. So I totally agree. When you look at your life, Don, you had this amazing success at one company, and then you had to take some hits, and you learned a lot in the process. And then you go to another company, and you now have amassed over 1,000 people in your organization. So what did you do differently, with the new opportunity versus the old? What's the new Don versus the old Don look like? What's changed?
Yeah, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier. One of the things that happened after I did finally clean up that mess at KW is I went into professional coaching, and I did that as a bridge because, of course, I had all this wisdom and I had a deep desire to make a difference for other people, but I wasn't putting my family at risk. Not very scalable. Coaching isn't, because it's a very linear activity. You can only coach so many people, but it allowed me to provide for my family when I was recovering emotionally. I just wasn't in a place to take risks. And even when I embarked on my EXP journey, which I began in 2019, I realized that EXP had this unbelievable model with this cloud-based brokerage that would enable me to enjoy the benefits of brokerage ownership without the broker liability and capital risk. And it scaled. So here I was given this opportunity to build, as you say, over 1,000-person organization and not put my family at risk at all, right? What a blessing that was. So for where I was, and by the way, think about the years. Okay, I cleaned up the mess in 2010. I joined EXP in 2019. Still 9 years in recovery. Okay. Yeah. And so, but I recognized that this was a unique opportunity, and that, of course, I knew, remember, I'm the guy that recruited 3 of the top 5 agents in the world. Okay. I knew that I was going to be able to attract people, especially to a model that had been as well thought out as the EXP model, right? It's a model that basically, gives the agent 80%, the company retains 10, and 10% goes to the agents that are building the company. And it is, it's just really brilliant in its structure. And one of the things that normally occurs in business is that when you scale something up, you add complexity, bureaucracy, liability, and risk. And I have found that not to be true with EXP. As my organization has grown, in fact, not only do I not have those risks, but as I develop leaders within my organization, it's actually become easier. And I'll never forget when I moved to Lake Tahoe recently, and a year before now, I was here with AJ Maida, and we were mountain biking. And after the mountain biking session, we got together, which is another lesson. Make sure you're hanging out with people that are doing better than you. And AJ had an organization like 6 times my size. And I was asking him, man, how much work are you doing, AJ? I mean, I'm thinking he's got 1,000, he's got 6,000. he's not even working as hard as me. By the way, we were mountain biking on a Thursday. Okay. So the point is that AJ had attracted into his life other leaders like me leading 1,000-person organizations. And whether AJ showed up that particular day or not, his organization was going to continue to grow and prosper. Okay. And so anyway, it's just been so often in life when you get into something, you think, man, wish this would have been a little better than I thought it was. And I have felt just the opposite with EXP. It's more than I bargained for, and I'm super grateful for it.
And we're super grateful you're with us. I think part of the reason why I resonate with you so much, there's many reasons, but one of them is we have a very similar story. Because I had a large stake in a company here in Phoenix, and things didn't go the way I wanted them to go at the end. And I went into a major depression, and emotional recovery is a real thing. And so I did very similar things. I went into coaching. I worked at a title company. Those were low risk endeavors for me as I licked my wounds and thought about, what did I learn? How can I become better? And now I feel like all those things I have bubbled up to the person I am today. And it's so much better, the person I am today. So I really resonate with that, because all that soaking time you had, there's probably a lot of thought, a lot of contemplation about, the way you're going to lead in the next endeavor. And we're just very blessed that you're with us. And I really have enjoyed it. In fact, we should segue to that, Don, because you're the founder of a company called Pro Insight. And this is a company that I'm so excited about that I jumped on board to help Don grow this company. And can you tell us about that company, Don? Because it's exploding and it is such a great concept.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Well, Pro Insight was born somewhat out of my frustration. What happened for me when I was in real estate, I told you I got not immediately, but within a year, I became a top producer. And what I found was that, of course, at that time I was working 60, 72 hours a week. And I would liken my experience to a buffet. I brought the food to the real estate industry, the client, and the other affiliates brought a fork. And in the form of my referrals, and I did not see that it was being reciprocated, and so I was always out there continuing to hunt for new food for all of us, and I just thought, well, that's kind of ironic, because don't we all have the same customer and the homeowner? And also, if we were to work in a more collaborative way, I think it would be for the betterment of the consumer as well. So I created and founded Pro Insight and a platform for professionals so that we could build for relationship-based top producers a professional referral network, right? And that not only the affiliates would benefit from, but the agents would as well. And so the foundation of that is top producing agents that work mostly by referral. And, for a long time, folks like Joe Stump, Brian Buffini have popularized working by referral as an agent. And I'm absolutely a fan of that. In fact, I coach to having 300 people in your sphere for whom you're a real estate resource and advisor to become their realtor of choice. Now what I'm coaching to is helping people to develop a professional sphere. And largely, especially now, and why it's so important today, is because historically, the turnover rate of homeowners is about every 10 years. And by the way, in 2005-06, it was about every 5 or 6 years, right? But today, because so many people have sub 3 and 4% mortgages, they're naturally reluctant to leave that to go from a 2.85 to a 6.25 mortgage. And so we're having less people move, and the transfer rate's gone up to maybe 16 to 20 years. And so as a top producer, and, Bella will tell you, when she, started losing, that wasn't something that she was fond of. You want to win when you're a winner, And so what we are doing at Pro Insight, we believe, is giving the top professionals, the ones that are relationship based, a path so that they can still win at the highest level and not compromise the way they want to do business. In other words, we can still have them working by referral, but now professional referral, and that's agent to agent or the other professionals involved in the transaction. And so, yeah, it's been, well, first of all, thank you for getting involved, because you've been a great contributor to our growth. And it's really, and it's, by the way, it's not just about making more referrals for the agents. All of the professionals are getting more referrals because of their involvement with Pro Insight, right? We're getting the painter to bubble up referrals for the flooring guy and vice versa, right? Or the financial advisor and the CPA. You know, it's really been a wonderful thing. And I'm glad to see that we've been able to attract such a quality professional. Our average agent, by the way, closed 37.2 transactions in the last 12 months. So, you know, I think that's something like 9 times the national average. And what we know, and the reason why we laid the foundation of Pro Insight with realtors, is because if you have A plus talent, they're going to tend to attract A lenders, maybe right. B plus, right? And that realtor lender team are going to attract the other. They've already built a network of other professionals that are superior. They wouldn't settle for anything less, right?
And the good news with this program, it's broker agnostic, right? You could be with any company. And if you're a producer, you're going to be vetted and invited into this program.
That's 100% right. We don't, and I've coached this for a long time, by the way, because many times I'll be coaching an agent and they're like, well, should I leave companies? You know, and I'm like, no, don't leave because you're not succeeding. A good professional in the real estate space anyway can succeed at virtually any company, right? And so what we want in the Pro Insight Network is we want the best, most relationship-based agents that we help transform into advisors, and we don't care what company they're with.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. So if you're an agent out there and you're like, you know what, I'd like to do more business by referral, and I'd like to bring my friends with me. I just got out of a training today. Our CEO, Justin Stoddard, did an amazing job talking about personal branding and how to elevate your brand. So the idea here is not just helping you out as an agent get more referrals, which, by the way, is an exclusive network across the United States where we're giving exclusivity to agents in zip codes that are available. But it's not just about that. It's also about helping your affiliates win too. So we're training them on how to build their business, and we're training them on how to refer back to you as an agent. Don, tell them the statistic about painting. A lot of people, you'd think they'd know this, but this is a good little example.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I just want to be sensitive to, I've got about less than 5 minutes left on my time and battery. And gotcha. So painting, and there is a fun story behind this. My number one agent in Denver, Conrad Steller, actually introduced me to this. And, the guy's the number one agent in a 300 agent office. And I was asking him about his top sources of business, particularly professional referrals. And he goes, well, it's my painter. And I says, really? Painter? He goes, yeah, I get like 4 or 5 listings a year from my painter. And I ended up researching this, and turns out between 30 and 40% of the time someone's painting a home, they're preparing it for sale. And in truth, actually, there's only 3 reasons somebody paints a home. They're preparing it for sale, there's deferred maintenance, or they just bought it and they want to personalize it. And so he had trained his painter to engage with the customer and ask, may I ask what has prompted you to paint your home? No, because if you're going to sell in the near future, we will certainly use a quality paint, but we may not want to choose the most expensive one. And we're going to do a fine job no matter what, but maybe not go to the same time and expense as if you tell me you're going to be here for another 10 years, right? And then if they said, well, matter of fact, we are selling this property, then he would go on to say, he had trained his painter to go on to say, well, painting is a wonderful thing to do. That being said, I have a real estate colleague, his name's Conrad, that as a courtesy, he will come out and show you how to optimize your home for sale and get top dollar. He'll tell you the different things that you could do to get it ready. And actually, maybe even as important, he'll share with you the things you don't need to bother with. And so, a very professional dialogue. Also, the painter's now matching the job to the need of the customer, which is great. He's viewed more as an advisor now as opposed to, a paint salesperson. And so everybody wins. And that was the beginning of helping me to better understand about how we could improve the interactions for all of these affiliates with their customer base, and at the same time bubble up opportunities for the realtors, that I was never the benefactor of during my career. And it's been fabulous. So now we've got many folks out there that are getting listings from their painters as a result.
This is great. And I want to make sure I honor your time, Don. He's the founder of Pro Insight. And by the way, if you're interested in jumping into that exclusive network of great agents, give me a call, reach out to me. We can help you get on board. But Don, what a pleasure and an honor to get to know you better and your story. You're a blessing. You've blessed many thousands of people over the course of your career. I learned a lot today, and I just look forward to working with you more in the future.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, Jeff. And Bella, pleasure to meet you. And
Pleasure to meet you too. Great.
Remind me not to challenge you to a softball game.
Oh no, those days are done.
Oh yeah, just remember that the skills that you acquired are not. You're only beginning. So
that's right.
Well done.
So my friends that are listening, thank you for joining. Go ahead and click subscribe on the Jeff Sutherland Show podcast if you could. And until next time, we're thankful you're with us. From Bella, Don, and myself, we say go get them. Have a great day.
Thanks, Don.
You.